We are now 362 days away from the midterms. Today, President Donald John Trump hosted Senate Republicans at the White House and shared what he thought of his party's big losses in last night's elections.
Last night, it was, not expected to be a victory. It was very Democrat areas, but I don't think it was good for Republicans. I thought we'd have a discussion after the press leaves about what last night represented and what we should do about it, and also about the shutdown and how that relates to last night. I think if you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. And that was a big factor. And they say that I wasn't on the ballot was the biggest factor. But I don't know about that. But I was honored that they said that.
Amazing, since he's been calling it the Democrats' shutdown for weeks. Multiple people who were at that meeting told Axios it was uncomfortable and eerily silent. Behind closed doors, Trump continued to blame the shutdown for the Republicans' losses last night, saying it has hurt his party far more than it hurt Democrats. Look, right now, there's a lot of talk about what last night means for 2026, 2028, and even beyond. There's also plenty of conversation about who is the quote-unquote leader of the Democratic Party. But for now, let's just look at last night on its own merit. One election night that is a snapshot of how Americans in those specific states and cities are feeling at this moment in time. Democrats won the big races across the board with bigger margins than expected in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City. One thing those winning candidates had in common, they all focused their campaigns on affordability and the cost of living. The Democrats also picked up key wins in much smaller races in swing states like Pennsylvania and Georgia. Remember, those are states that went for Donald Trump 1 year ago. So two themes seem clear for this one snapshot. Voters turning to Democrats on the economy and swing states swinging back to the left. And by the way, this happened during what is officially now the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. All right, let's bring in our nightcap. Daniel Coe is here, former White House cabinet secretary during the Biden administration. He is running for Massachusetts' 6th congressional district. No, you are not a cabinet secretary. You are the chief of staff to a cabinet secretary.
Deputy cabinet secretary.
There we go. Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer covering courts and law and Slate. John Della Volpe, director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics. He's also an MSNBC political contributor. And David Rode, MSNBC national security reporter. His book, Where Tyranny Begins, is out now on paperback. Daniel, you are the one running for office as a Democrat. So what are you feeling about last night? What lessons are you taking away?
I'm feeling we're back, baby. That's the bottom line. Look, I think for an entire Trump administration that has been mocking the term diversity and inclusion and equity for the last couple of years, I think we're seeing a diverse view of what the Democratic movement can be. We see one version in New York with Zohran Mamdani. We see a different version with Spamberger. We see a different version with Cheryl. But you know what? The message is real, that people are fed up with this president trampling the Constitution, affronting all of our values. And I think what people are seeing is a repudiation of that all across and in a different ideologies. And that's a good thing. Look, all Democrats don't need to have the same opinions. But I think that we need to stand united and that we're going to fight back for the country that we believe in and that we are going to focus on those issues of affordability. And if Democrats can convince people that we are the party that can help bring down your costs and bring rationality, we win every time.
John, there was another big theme last night, a surge in young people voting Democrat. And I feel like you have been on television for the last year trying to answer why is it that all these young people have swung to the right? And then that didn't happen last night.
Well, listen, I think you're right. I don't think Democrats are celebrating today without younger people. For example, in New York City today, if the election were held among only people of my generation and older, Andrew Cuomo is mayor today. It is specifically young people in this city and younger people in Virginia and New Jersey that drove those margins. Specifically, break down younger people. We're talking about women being the foundation, I think, of the Democratic Party. Younger women under 30, they voted for the Democratic candidates by 60-point margins. Okay, 79, 8 out of 10 women voted blue. And as you talked about, those younger men swung back. So if women are the foundation, young men are the hinge. And we know that hinges swing back and forth. And when there's an economic message that is in touch with their day-to-day reality, we can see what happens.
But that's the thing. Those candidates you're talking about in New Jersey and Virginia happened to be women. They were running on economic issues. So this argument that it's about diversity, equity, inclusion, they were women. They were the strongest candidates who happened to be women who were not running on platforms that were focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. They were saying, let's talk about your energy bills. Let's talk about your housing costs.
It's about their everyday lives. And I also think that Donald Trump was correct. He wasn't on the ballot, and that meant that a lot of his younger supporters who are working class folks who listen to kind of the podcasters who aren't as supportive today as they were a year ago, by the way, right? The social media in the digital landscape has changed rather quickly. Okay, so there wasn't a lot of support outside of that traditional mainstream for Republicans, and I think that made a difference as well. But it shows up when Democrats talk about affordability and everyday costs, everyday concerns. Guess what? Younger people show up in big numbers.
David, the president's name wasn't on the ballot, but the impact of his policies were, right? The president is now blaming the shutdown. Lots of people could say, yes, the shutdown had a lot to do with it, but it was just days ago he continued to call this the Democrats' shutdown.
Yeah, and I think it's a broader dynamic. I think this is a vote for change, that there's people so frustrated. And I agree in many ways with just health care doesn't seem to work. Colleges are extraordinarily expensive. Kids can't buy homes. Climate change, there's these disasters happening. There's so many things that don't work in the country. And Trump at least hasn't delivered or delivered in the way people hoped. And I'm just thrilled that the turnout was so high. I'm thrilled that people believe, young people in particular, are knocking on doors, being passionate and participating in democracy. Because cynicism and apathy to me is the most
I actually think the greatest win last night was voter turnout, right? When you saw that 2 million New Yorkers showed up to vote yesterday, that's democracy in action. That's what patriotism looks like. What's your takeaway?
Well, I think one under-discussed thing here is the impact of DOGE in Virginia, right? The impact of those 20-something freaks under Elon Musk's control coming in and traumatizing and firing.
We do not know if they are freaks. They can be totally unqualified for the task at hand.
Okay, well, I've encountered some of them, unfortunately, in D.C.
Okay,
and
fair.
Those were freaks.
Okay.
They came in, they fired thousands of members of the civil service for no reason whatsoever, right? Traumatized so many Northern Virginians. Where do these government workers disproportionately live? Northern Virginia. They were voting on this, right? After 2026, there will be no more Republicans representing Northern Virginia in the House of Delegates. I think you can tie a lot of that to Elon Musk. I think that it played a role. I also think that when we're talking about this election and we're ignoring sort of, oh, the candidates didn't say DEI, the candidates didn't talk about equality. We got a lot of bleed over of those Virginia ads in D.C., right? The message was clear when you see Abigail Spanberger's face, right? She's saying that diversity can coexist with meritocracy. She climbed to the top. She was in the CIA. She accomplished all these things. She didn't need to tell voters that she was a woman. Everybody understood that. And so she didn't run on any kind of backlash to DEI. She just said, look at me. I'm proof that the Democratic Party believes in strong leaders. And that was enough to put her 15 points over.
But you made this allusion, I think, is apt about values. And I think it goes more than that. I'm going to say something that Democrats don't usually say, which is I agree with what the Pope has been saying. Okay? We have a situation where
clearly Daniel watches this show. The Pope is my MVP on a regular basis.
Well, listen. I'm a God-fearing Catholic.
There you go.
And when I see people who are being held by ICE and priests not being able to give communion, when I see people literally going underground in California to go to Mass because they're worried about getting apprehended, when I see churches who usually give so much charity having to divert their resources to give food because the government's not there for them, I think people see that as a bridge too far and a violation of what we stand for as Americans. I think that is very different than what we saw, actually even more so than in the first Trump administration. I think people are taking exception to that.
Young people are the people you focus on most. If you were coaching Democrats running for office, looking at the elections we just saw in the last 24 hours, what would you say to those Democrats?
I think three things. The first of which is to validate the feelings younger people have about the incredible cost for basic aspects of their life and tie that directly to Trump. That's number one. He isn't running against the system. He is the system now. That's the first thing. The second thing is take the lesson from what James Carville said was the best communicator in the party today, Zohran Mamdani, and be specific. It's not just about affordability. It's how do you attack affordability? In his case, it's universal child care, it's free buses, it's access to groceries, et cetera. Be specific. And the third thing is to not think this is a communications problem. This isn't about better on TikTok or better on
That was the
podcasts.
most boomer thing you've ever said.
Right.
Better on TikTok.
Yeah,
it was like you were challenging my mother.
like that.
Right, but it's
Louise
not-
Rule
it's-
joined the show tonight.
But it's not. It's just not about technology, right? It's about authenticity and living those lives.
And that's what Mamdani did. I mean, one of the best videos was when he was going to freeze the rent and he's standing on the beach in the middle of winter and he runs and then dives into the freezing water. But he took risks just by being so out there and doing things. So, yes, it's a different platform. It's social media. But he was very blunt and direct. And I think there's an authenticity. And Donald Trump does that well.
If you close your eyes
he takes risks.
and think about all the things that Donald Trump did in 2015 and 2016 to splash onto the scene and win over voters, it's very similar to the impact Mamdani had.
And I just think there's that kind of polished, refrained, old model of politician doesn't attract people.
But then isn't Trump positioned to lose that base? Because exactly how he ended up in power in 2015 and 2016, he's not only not serving that base, he's now serving the ultra wealthiest establishment that he was running against, or the idea, right? This was the I'm going to drain the swamp, and now he's swimming with them every day and has abandoned that base.
So on substance, I completely agree, right? He ran as an outsider, as a disruptor, and all he's doing is helping the rich and the powerful. That's easy to see. But I also think it's interesting to contrast his style these days with Mamdani, and especially Mamdani's victory speech. If you watch that speech all the way through last night, it was not a traditional speech, right? It wasn't structured in a way that sort of built on themes and led to this peroration. It was like every 30-second chunk was meant to be a soundbite on TikTok, because this guy is a digital native. He knows how to go viral multiple times in one night. And compare that to when Trump goes on these podcasts, when he went on Theo Von, whatever. He's still just an old guy in a podcast studio. He doesn't know the style. He doesn't know the lingo, right? It comes across as a senior citizen trying to seem cool. I think that's going to become more and more apparent as he gets older and older and starts to lose his step even more.